Good morning. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene. And today we're talking about the best RPGs for new role players.
Right.
Which is a very title that is probably incorrect, but okay, go.
So I think what you have to keep in mind is who are these new people playing the game?
Okay, that's what I meant by the title might be deceiving, because we're really not talking about any specific RPG, but about the players that the new players that want to play. What is it that they want to play?
Right. And I think a lot of new players will probably want to play something like Dungeons and Dragons, something they've heard of, or another game that they've always have heard of or heard from a different person or a friend of theirs. I was reading on Reddit, somebody was saying, my friend was telling me about Shadowrun. It was, which is the best edition to start playing in, right? Which started this cavalcade of...
Oh my God, that shouldn't be your first game.
No, actually they were very encouraging, saying, oh, it's great that you want to play Shadowrun. There is 6 editions of it, right? And everybody who posted that suggested...
Liked a different edition?
Yeah, and suggested a reason why. There were some people who did like a comparison of the different editions. They said most people would avoid 1 and 2. There was a smattering of people who liked 3rd edition. Some people liked the 4th edition. Some people liked the 4th edition 20th anniversary edition, which is different from the regular 4th edition. Some people said 5th edition was really well, and some people said that it was 6th edition. They all agreed that they were poorly written rules.
And this is when the new player turns around and goes, never mind.
Well, I think some people even, I think you're right. I think you're right about that. And some people even suggested other games of the cyberpunk genre, which mixes in fantasy, because Shadowrun is not only cyberpunk, but it's also fantasy included, which is I would say it's a genre all its own, right?
So I'm not going to say I would discourage anyone who came to me and said they wanted to play Shadowrun, because it's a great setting, and I would tell them, and I would offer to run a game for them, or at least find someone who knew the rules better than I did, who could actually help them. But if that's the game they want to play their first time, I would suggest that you make the characters a bunch of different characters and have them choose them, because Shadowrun is a very hard game to make characters in.
I think you are correct. It's a little lengthy process. So,
because if you're new, the last thing you want to be stuck doing, since you do not know the system, the game, or what even you're going to be doing, is to be sitting down and someone says, okay, I'm going to put Chummer on for you and let's go for it. And this is going to take us about an hour and a half, and you have a lot of choices to make, and you have no idea what they're talking about. And I'm just telling you that is going to turn them off. So if you have the characters made for them, and when they come in for their 0 session, and I'm putting quotes here because it's a brand new game, so everything is going to be a 0 session for them, right?
Yeah. I think 0 session implies a little bit more than this is just your first session.
Yes, I know, but
making,
they don't know that.
Rules establishing and all that crap. Yeah.
So I would suggest that if that's the game they want to play, you have everything ready to go and make it a short adventure and let them see the mechanics of it while they're having fun.
Right. I think when I also remember, this is way back. This is before the pandemic. I was listening to a podcaster. I forget his name, but it's a strange name.
Welcome to my life.
Lex Skywalker, I believe it was his name. I forget what his... he used to talk about Numenera, and then he switched to everything. So he was saying that he wanted to get his girlfriend was interested in playing a role-playing game. So he decided to run a Pathfinder game. And so he helped her make a Pathfinder character, and by the time she was finished making a character, she did not want to play. She's like, this is crazy. I don't want to do this. And so Boom. And he said, I made a mistake. That I chose Pathfinder because he was into Pathfinder at the time. This is how old did this happen? Long ago this happened. First edition, not second edition. So this is a while ago.
A lot of people are still into Pathfinder.
Yeah, but he was playing Pathfinder 2 at the time. And he regrets it, right? He says that was the wrong game for a brand new player to start off with, blah, blah, blah. So I've been there too. I've been to when people ask me, "Oh, I want to play a role playing game, or I want to play D&D, whatever." Okay, a lot of times you just got to ask, "Okay, why do you want to play this game? Is it only because you heard of it? Is it because you're really interested in the setting?" All these things you should ask as a D&D. I mean, as a game master or a future game master of a new group or new players, and then that'll guide you to what game you should run, right? And I would always run an easier game than a complex game, right? Rules, mechanics wise. So really popular to me and a lot of people is a new year zero engine, which is just the attribute plus your skill, and that's how many D6s you roll. The good thing about such a system, and then there's other systems that are just as simple. The 2D6 system, Traveler and Liminal.
Just don't make them start with making a Traveler character. I'm just saying. Because they ain't ever going to come back.
Some people actually love the whole process.
Yes, but when you're a new player, you want, and this is what I told Saul, I go, because he was thinking when we started talking about this or talking about doing this episode, he was thinking about, oh, well, we should just put out some games like Tales from the Loop, maybe D&D. D&D is a little harder, so do something simple. I'm like, it's really going to depend on what the players or the new people want to play, right? If they really want to play Traveler, then make those characters for them so they don't have to go through the experience of their character dying the first time. After you play the first session, and if they want to make their own characters, go for it. They're going to be excited about it and then experience the how to do it, right?
Right.
But when you don't want to go, okay, this is what making characters is a lot of times hard for new players, unless it's really simple, like Tales from the Loop. And even then, I've suggested to Saul that you probably want to make the characters for them. So when he runs it at a convention, he lets the people make their characters because it's only a half-hour process, right?
Probably doesn't. I think that the longest it took was like 20 minutes in the last time I ran it, and that's because these young people who were in their late teens and early 20s had never played anything else other than Pathfinder, organized play. The shock that it was so simple, that took them a long time, and then because they thought, oh, everything is so critical, I go, don't worry about it. It's not critical. It's not that big of a deal. They were stunned at the simplicity of what they were doing because they were thinking, oh, we're going to make a character. And they're thinking,
because they're Pathfinder.
Oh, my God, it's going to take us an hour. I go, no, it's going to take you 10, 15 minutes. And the longest it took was 20 minutes.
Because sometimes it's hard to make those decisions when you're...
Yes.
And being new, unless you're like, the kind of guy or girl or person that wants to just go, I'm just going to I'll try this.
Yeah, lazy fairy.
Yeah.
And so I think when we look at games that through that lens is what do the players want or what kind of experience they want too.
Right.
So when you said Traveler, I would not ever play the original Traveler books, right? The 3 Little Black Books or any of the official Traveler games. I would probably choose Mongoose Traveler, or there's a one called Cepheus, which is a redone of the 2D6 system.
But see, not everybody knows this.
Right, but as a GM, is knowledgeable and you know that somebody wants to play a game. Also, when I was talking about Shadowrun, the guy was talking about Shadowrun that he wanted to play. Other people suggested other games, like there's something by Savage Worlds. There's all kinds of a few cyberpunk games, and people were like, somebody suggested Rifts, right? And everybody goes, no, right?
See, so when GMs are talking about what's a good game for new players, they have a totally different view, right? They're thinking about the rule set, how easy it will be for them to pick up the game and that kind of stuff. And when you're a new player going, I want to play D&D because I saw it online or I watched it on YouTube,
right? Then
you're like, you have these expectations. So Saul is correct. You have to go, what is it you think is going to happen during this game, right?
Right.
What are you expecting? Because every game can be exciting if they tell you what they want. You create characters and then you let them choose them and you make it a short session, like no more than 3 hours for the first game.
Yeah.
And so you make it a short adventure and say they want to do And I always think Feng Shui is a good introduction game, right? Because it's really exciting because you can do all kinds of stuff. But that might be too much for new players that don't, how would I say it? They don't know how to do the crazy role playing, right? Yeah, the fantastical stuff. But you tell them this is like a kung fu movie, right?
Right.
Hong Kong action movie.
Yes.
And then maybe that starts their juices flowing or whatever. Or they've seen Critical Role and that's what they want to do.
Right. I think, and then that's what you really have to look at is to see what they're interested in and what their level of, how would you say, what level of understanding about how much complexity they can handle.
Yeah.
And now it has nothing to do with age, though it does have a little bit to do with age. Like when my sons and me started playing role-playing game, I didn't play D&D. I made up my own system. It was literally three attributes, and the attributes were 1 through 6, and basically you rolled. It was like a skill plus stat system, and it was 6-sided dice. So all he had to do was count the pips. So he could do that at age 4 and 5. And he did. He liked rolling the dice, right? That was part of it. And I think another thing is because they're 6-sided dice, it's not confusing to people. Like Feng Shui, like Tales from the Loop, and those games, 2D6 system like Traveler. When people, I've seen it before. When people look at the polyhedral dice, they're like, "What the hell are those things?" Right? Like it's another hurdle in their own mind to jump over. It goes, why are there these weird dice? Unless they already know about the weird dice, then that's what they want. They want that weird dice experience. Like, I want to know what those weird dice are about. Why do we use weird dice? And
I remember playing with someone who kept confusing the 8-sided and 10-sided. 8 and 12, I think it was.
8 and 12. No, 8 and 12 and 10 maybe.
Yeah, and I remember sitting there going, no, that's the wrong die. You need to, that's a great roll, but you need to roll the other die.
You got to roll the right die. So you're right. I think it all depends on the expectations of the players. Now, there's some games that I would definitely try to run for a new player. If they go, oh, I want to play a role-playing game. Okay, and I get them. I'll ask them questions about what are you interested in.
His question would be, do you like the 80s?
Do you like the 80s? Yes, Tales from the Loop, and it depends on age too, right? Like somebody was saying, I've read on a Reddit, and it was very interesting that the answers they were talking about. This father wanted to introduce. The kids wanted to play a role playing game, and I don't know if he had any or much experience role playing. I don't think he did, and he wanted to play a game for his kids between the age of 6 and 15. Mm-hmm. And first of all, people are going, that's a really wide age range, right? Not wide in the sense that there's a lot of years in between, but
in the genres they like, the ideas they like.
Well, the idea of a 6-year-old and between like the mental powers or ability to calculate and stuff and understanding between the 6 and a 15-year-old is a lot.
Right.
Like a 15-year-old to a 25-year-old, yeah. They could pretty much.
But a 6 to a 15-year-old.
Yes.
You're talking between what the fairies are doing and the 15-year-old's going, I want to play a horror game.
Or I want to slash and
exactly
kill things, right?
You might not want to have those kids playing together unless they're willing to. The 15-year-old's willing to help.
There was a lot of people saying that, and that's good because I think that's one of the things that I would ask the father, saying, do you really think that they're going to have that the game that you're running for all of them is going to be able to entertain both of those people, those different, such a wide range of interests that those two might have.
I did that when I ran a kids game. I had the boys were teenagers.
10, 12?
No, they were a little bit old. They must have been like 12 to and Ian was 15. And I remember that Ian and Blaine helped me with the little kids because I had a whole lot of them.
Oh, that was
It was at Celesticon.
Yes.
But they literally helped me because these little kids had no concept of the dice and stuff.
Yeah.
So the boys were sitting around the table helping these little boys and girls play.
And little, you're talking little.
Yeah, they were between I think some of them were like 6.
Yeah, 5 and 6.
And I gave one of them one of my characters, one of my favorite characters, because she really, really wanted to play a sorceress. So I gave it to her. And then the boys,
Pathfinder.
I was running Pathfinder,
Yeah.
and the boys were helping these kids, and it was a cool interaction between older kids helping younger kids.
Right.
This is the dice you roll. This is what you want to do. Say that I want to do this, right? And they were, so it was a the boys were having fun because they got to play with these kids.
But
right?
they also asked you, like, they want to do this, but they can't do that. I forget who it was, and you're like, just let them do it.
I did say that.
Yes. And so when you have that wide range of, but see, you had players who had played before,
Right.
who were older.
Yes.
And in this case, none of them have played before. So, and then somebody suggested Tales from the Loop, and I thought of you because you're like, why would little kids want to play Tales from the Loop?
Since they don't know anything about the 80s.
Right. And I think you're right. And I've heard other people say it. They're like, well, I'm not sure young players, children between the ages of 10 and 15, 16, want to play characters who are 10 and 15.
Exactly.
They want to play fantastical characters, older characters that are self-sufficient. And why do they want to play kids that can't do stuff or who are
And not
limited?
only that, unless you are of Generation X and you
Yes.
were in high school during the 80s
Right.
or junior high and then high school, it's not like it's going to mean a lot to you. Maybe if you grew up in the 90s, it might mean something to you, but it's not the same, right? It's not, little kids are like going, like my son would go, who cares?
You got to pick your own 80s song. Okay. They'll roll their eyes at you and stuff. Why? Okay. Right. We're not going to play Tales from the Loop, thanks. But there's other games that use that same engine or
Yes.
that same mechanic.
Yeah.
Feng Shui uses 6-sided dice. Like I said, it all depends on how much experience they have. If they've heard of polyhedral dice, if they've never seen it, maybe you want to stick with 6-sided dice side type games.
I'll tell you something though. Kids love 20-sided dice.
Really?
Yeah.
They're pretty cool. I loved them when I was a kid.
I like 20-sided dice still. I don't know what it is about the 20-sided dice, but it's, it's like almost a circle.
Yeah.
And it rolls
really
well.
good. Yeah. You don't have to roll it hard or anything.
And
maybe that's the problem too. Is like many dice when I was younger went off the table.
yeah.
So we had to roll. He goes, oh, it doesn't count if it rolls off the table. Right. Okay. So I agree with Jolene that it does matter who is asking to play or wants to play or who you think you want to ask to play, who's a new player. Ask them what they want to play. So if they want to play D&D, right, and that's probably 90% of the chance that that's what they want to play.
Because that's the one they heard about.
That's the one they heard. There's a movie about it. There's been other movies about. There's been a show about Tales from the Loop, but it's very loosely based on the game. And probably people didn't realize that there was a role playing game based on that. Alien, that kind of stuff. Blade Runner, based on big movies, but they probably didn't even realize that there is a role playing game based on that. So D&D, everybody knows it's a game. Everybody pretty much knows that it's a role playing game. So I think Jolene said everything right. You make the characters ahead of time. You don't make them make their own characters, and then you run that session 0. You get everybody together. This is the rules of the game. This is what I want to allow or not allow at the game table. Whether there's special rules as to whether you want
You want it to be a condensed version because
Yes.
you don't want to do a session 0 and make them come back to play. You want to do
Right.
it like 20 minutes of
Yeah.
this is kind of how you play the game, and this is what
Correct.
we don't accept, or
Right.
I would like it to be a very friendly.
Right, and it depends on the age of the character of the players and the group of the players you are running, and and then you run the game, right? And the game should be something that's very simple in a certain sense of what they need to do. Like the quest or the adventure should be pretty straightforward. There's not going to be a lot of red herrings. Don't do red herrings or misleads in the first session. You can add complexity later on. I think the simpler you keep the game, add action to the game. It's a lot of you want action in the game because they want to do stuff, And don't forget that each character has certain abilities, and they call it, people call it different things. You got the spotlight. You want to make every character have a shining moment, whatever you want to call it, and they have to be able to do that because that makes them feel special, especially if they've never played a game before. Because if you play a role playing game and all you do is sit there and go, oh well, I can't do anything in this situation. Oh, I can't do anything in this situation. That's not going to be a fun experience, and then you might never have that person come back because it was kind of boring.
And as a GM, and I know a lot of GMs are into, and I totally agree, this is what I do. This is what I did with my current Shadowrun game. I just give them, this is the situation, and just let them go. And then they come up with what they want to do and they do it. But if you're playing with new players, I'm going to tell you that you should let them come up with ideas, but you should also, if they're having a hard time, like say it's the sorceress or sorcerer and they want to throw a spell, but they don't know what spell to throw, you could suggest to them.
Oh yeah, you gotta help them out.
If it's a like a puzzle or something and they've never seen it, I wouldn't suggest putting a puzzle in.
Never put a
but
puzzle.
If it's a labyrinth or something, give them a clue that there's a map on the wall or something, that look, if you look at the map, maybe you can figure out what to do or how to do it, or that kind of thing, right? Well, you don't want to stifle them, but you don't want to railroad them. But since they're new players, you want to give them suggestions, right?
Right.
To make sure that everybody gets to do something and have fun.
First of all, never put a puzzle in a role playing game. That's rule number 1, right?
Saul, rule number 1.
Rule that's better in the golden rules, rule 9, first rule, whatever you want to call it.
People love that stuff, Saul.
I don't know. I don't know. All I gotta say is we have personal experience about puzzles, and it never goes well. I've yet to see it go well. How's that? I've yet to see it go well in real life, in a real session. So if somebody comes up to you and you're like, "Oh, I want to play a role playing game. I don't know what kind of game I want to play," then you play to your strengths. Like, what are your favorite RPGs that you know really well, that you don't even have to look at the book for rules, right? Those are probably the best games for you to run and be able to help new players play that game. Because I don't know, you use the reference to D&D player and a sorcerer. What can I do? Well, there's different things you can do, right? And I remember this in when I was running. It was running Tales from the Loop, which is not a difficult game, but I had a player who was really shy, and so every time I got to her, I go, "Okay, what do you want to do?" And she goes, "I don't know." I'm like, "Okay." I go, "This is what you can do." Right. And so I would give her 2 to 3 options at every time I asked her. And every time she didn't know what she wanted to do. So other players around her would help her. We're like, well, if you want to, it depends on what do you want to do after. What do you want the effects of the spell to do? Because she was a spellcaster of sorts. What do you think your character is going to want to do? So they were very helpful. And she was just super shy, or I'm not even sure.
Was she like somebody's friend that was playing?
I have no idea. She was a girlfriend of somebody on, but like the person that was the boyfriend or the friend wasn't at the table.
Oh.
So he or she or whoever was at another game, and he signed her up for this one. And because it was at KublaCon, it's a shuffler, right?
Right.
So I remember somebody bringing her and she's going, "Oh, it goes, she's a new player, blah blah." I go, "Don't worry, it's a real easy system." And then everybody else goes, "Yeah, we'll." And so that was the problem, right? That she was without her friend.
Well, it was probably the first time that she had played, right?
I think so. So I was just shocked and shocked that could happen. That I would have said, you know what, I'm gonna not go to my game. I'm just gonna sit here, even if I don't play.
Yeah.
Chances are I would have given the character sheet and say, yeah, sure, let's just do this. But I did. But she didn't, or she didn't, and then she was by herself, and it was like pulling teeth trying to get her to role play, and she really did.
But at least everybody helped her.
Yeah, and she did do stuff, but it was like.
Well, so I could see that being the first time you're playing. You're like.
And there was, there's a lot of big personalities around that table.
Yeah.
Right. I had Jonah and I had Greg. I think Greg was in it, maybe not. But and there was other group of people who were like big personalities. They were very bold and action orientated. And so here's this meek person in the corner, not in the corner, but at the edge of the table going, oh, what am I going to do? So I think when you come up with a game, a lot of it depends on the player, and a lot of it depends on how old they are, and a lot of it depends on how they think, right? Like now my son, my friends' sons too, they're very, I don't know what you'd call it, mechanically inclined. They're taking math, taking physics, and all this crap. They literally talk numbers and weird stuff. So my friend came over this last weekend. We played in Shadowrun, and Jolene was running, and it was like we were like, I don't know if it was after the game or like an interlude in the game.
It was in the middle of the game.
In the middle of the game, the boys were talking about numbers, right? About this number. If I can just do this, it give me a chance to do this. And they're talking about the mechanics of the game and how mini-max their character as much as possible and stuff like that. And my friend Cipriano, who was next to me, he's all, they really like all this number stuff, don't they? He goes, oh, yeah. I go, yeah. He goes, that's it was incredulous to him that they were just like going off about the mechanics of the system, and he was like, my God, this is a really difficult system to play. There's a lot of moving parts to this Shadowrun 5th edition, and he's like, he was just playing a character who was a gunman, and so his was pretty easy compared to other stuff. Other players like a sorcerer or
the problem was that I had put some things that could actually hurt them, and Alan was down to like 1 health, and Augustine was almost stunned, so he was going to pass out, right? So they were like so excited because they rarely get to that position. So they were coming up with what they could do and what's going to happen if this happens, and that's a lot of Shadowrun is figuring out what you're going to do, right? How you're going to, and it's all up to the GM how long they give you to do that. And these guys, they just go off in their heads about the stuff, and they're having so much fun. Me and Kathy, I was running the game and I was sitting next to Kathy, and she just looked at me and smiled. She's like, look at how much fun they're having. And that's like a really cool thing for parents, right?
They're like geeking out.
Yeah.
Right? That's what it's called, nerding out, what do you call it? And then my friend, he was like shaking his head going, man, these guys really love this stuff.
And I go, what are you going to do? And then they went, and they're like, and Augustine's all, she's going to kill me. Well, he was very unhappy about that.
He did put himself in that position.
So, that is fun, right? They were having a lot of fun. That is what the whole role-playing thing is to do, right? To have fun.
Right. And I think that's what you have to remember is, even though they're learning a system or learning a game, you have to entertain them. It has to be entertaining. You don't have to entertain them. It has to be entertaining, whatever the situation is. And I think sometimes certain GMs might forget that. They're like, oh, they got to learn the rules. They got to learn the rules right. And that way they can know how to play better and be able to play the right way. No, they're there to have fun. Remember, it's a game. Games are supposed to be fun. And I would think I'd make it very simple in the sense that they're not going to use the most complicated rules. There might be like one fight scene, and the rest is like doing skill checks and trying to figure stuff out, whether to like a heist or something like that. But make it fun. I think that's the most important part of any session that involves new players. And it doesn't matter the game system. I don't think it does matter too much. You could run Shadowrun. If you know the rules pretty well, then you just tell them, oh yeah, roll this bucket of dice and tell me how many 5s and 6s you get. Okay, you got 5 of them. Okay, I'm going to roll my bucket of dice, and if my bucket of dice gets more 5s and 6s than yours, you miss. Oh, okay. That's easy.
And let me tell you, they're going to get hooked on that because the boys just love that. They love having all of those dice to roll.
I think some people like buckets of dice, right?
Yeah. And some people don't.
And some people don't. They like the more free forms. I want to be able to just more or less know what I'm going to do and have a better idea of my chances, right? Because when you're rolling 15, 16 dice, 17, 18, 20 dice and trying to figure out how many 5s and 6s you're going to get, I know there's a statistical equation that'll tell you your percentage chance of
if you sit at our table, they'll tell you what it is.
Of being successful. But for the most part, I don't care, right? I don't want to care.
And it's just different, right? Roll, and that's what Saul's talking about, the dice, right? If you're playing D&D and you're just rolling a 20-sided dice, and the GM says roll the dice, and you hit like a 14, and he goes, okay, what is this? Then it's the same effect as rolling 26-sided dice and counting up the ones to see how many successes you have, except there's an opposing roll, right? And in D&D, usually the GM doesn't do an opposing roll for a
You just
check.
got to hit over a number.
You just got to get to a certain number. So if you tell them what that number is and what you're gonna roll this dice and you're gonna add this number to it, and if you hit this number, you're successful.
Right, and I think a lot of it has to do with the style, right? You want the players to come out of their shell and experience a role playing game differently than anything else they experience. So a lot of times, as a GM, you want them to describe what they're doing,
Right?
Because that brings them out of their shell if they're even like shy. Most people are a little bit weird about speaking in character and talking like you're a different person. So when you ask, how are you doing it? Right. Not just swing the sword, but what is the purpose, or what are you swinging at? You're trying to swing. And so when they describe something to you, I think they're more likely to get into the character more and more and more. And that's where really the fun of role playing is when you have that connection to your character, and you kind of feel like you're your character.
Well, and one of the funnest things is like, you need to cross this bridge, right? And
bridge.
and no matter, everybody thinks it's easy to cross a bridge, right? But if you tell them, okay, I need you to do an agility check, one of them is going to roll badly, possibly. And then the silliness is going to ensue because your character just is slipping off the bridge. You're holding on with your hands. What's happening? What are the rest of you doing?
Well, when she says bridge, a lot of times he's like a stone,
log,
a log, a tree fell over a ravine. There's a stone that fell over a creek or a river. So they're not real bridges. They're just like, oh, why should I walk across a bridge? Well, it's more of an impromptu bridge, right? So, and then every time there's a session, every session that I've ever played in, it happens to be a very difficult thing to do.
But it makes the game fun, right?
Yes, the
because
unexpected.
you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. So in the ravine, some people didn't fall off, but they stumbled and they
Twisted
sprained
their
their ankle. And I think you fell into the river.
I fell into the river, and people had to save me.
I tried to save you by jumping into the river, but that was a big mistake. Then I needed to be rescued. I failed to realize how fast the river was moving. and so things like that happen. And I think when you...
So all you have to do really is set the scene for the people, right? And then say, what do you want to do? How do you want to do it? And let them come up with ideas.
Right.
And then, okay, well, that's going to be, you're going to do your, climbing roll or whatever. And then, or just roll this dice and tell me, and then see if you succeed. That
Right.
kind of thing.
Yeah, I think if you are able to figure out the kind of game they want to play, the kind of adventure they want to be in, the rest should be pretty easy. The rest is just making sure that they have a fun time, make sure they're entertained. Fun and entertainment, I don't know if they're the same thing, but if somebody's there not participating, you have to kind of draw them out. That's a situation that's going to happen with new players, is that they're not going to know what to do, or they feel intimidated by people who like catch on to the game really quickly, and maybe they don't for whatever reason. They might be shy. They may not be able to convey their thoughts very well. So don't forget of any of the players that are at your table, especially if you have some players that are very strong personalities and like to talk and can carry a conversation really well, or really into role playing. So when you have that situation, I think it's good to always remember everybody at the table and don't forget people, mainly because there's other people who might overtake the table. And another thing is that sometimes other players will go, oh, I think John should do this, and kind of say, okay, let John decide what he wants to do, because he hasn't been saying much, or maybe he has a different idea of what his character wants to do. So I would always correct that kind of stuff, especially for new players, because sometimes people just go along. They go, okay, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I'll do that. I'll do what Rick says. I'll just and then you get this person who's kind of dictating what everybody's going to do, and that might not be very fun for other people. John might have a great time. I mean, Rick, but not everybody else. So I think there's all kinds of things you can do as a GM who are going to introduce new players to a role playing, to this hobby. I think there's There's different games who are easy games. There are genres that they want to explore, and if they want to play a game that's a little bit more difficult than you think they could handle, keep it simple and play the game. I think, and as long as you know the rules, it should go rather well. If somebody really wanted to play Shadowrun, and I was well versed in 5th edition. Now I played 5th edition, I run 5th edition, but I'm not sure how well versed I was. I could probably run a group of people who fight, use guns and do melee attacks and stuff like that, and do magic. The cyber hacker, or whatever you want to call him, the decker, maybe not so much, but I could run that, and it would probably run really easy for new players, as long as you can say, oh, just grab this bucket, like I said, bucket of dice, roll, and this is how I'm gonna try to not get hit by your bullet. I get to dodge, but if I shoot at you, you get to dodge too. So that kind of stuff, as long as you know the rules really well, I think you can even play a very difficult game like Pathfinder and stuff.
Yeah,
as long as you don't make them make their own characters.
So most importantly is, what do they want to play?
Right.
And try to present it in the easiest way possible, right, with showing them what role playing is, rolling the dice and the decisions they get to make, and making it fun and making it a shorter adventure, so they're not, okay, we're going to have to meet again in 2 weeks to finish this adventure. You might not want to do that with new players. You just want them to rescue the damsel in distress, save the kid, make it to the.
You want to conclude the session.
Yeah, you want to conclude it.
The adventure session. Yes. Yeah, make it real simple. I think most games, when you go to conventions now, they're in a 4-hour time slot.
Yeah.
So that is a pretty tight time slot. Now, if you run a game for new players and you have 45 minutes of introduction to the characters and all that stuff, you can easily finish and run a game in 3 hours.
Yeah.
And that should be perfect. And the idea that there's closure, wow, the job well done, and they're high-fiving each other. And I think there's, you can easily get people hooked into role-playing if that happens.
And that's all Saul wants to do, is get them to hooked into role playing.
Hooked into role-playing.
So there you go. Those are just some ideas for if you have new players that want to play.
Yes.
So this is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene.
You have a good day.